Let us come quietly to this hour and admit something we have long suspected. Shame promises reform, but it does not heal. Under shame we hide, we harden, or we despair. You know this. Have you ever noticed that the moment you feel condemned, your capacity to love diminishes? The mind becomes a courtroom, the heart a locked cell, and out of that atmosphere we cannot bring forth kindness or repair. Only more fear, more resistance, more clever evasions. Condemnation separates, and what is separated from love cannot be made whole by more separation. We are not here to excuse harm. We are here to end the inner violence that perpetuates harm, by convincing you that you and God stand on opposite sides of the bench. That is the lie. I and the Father are one. Not two, not adversaries. One. Your Father and my Father. One life, one substance, one law. The moment condemnation takes its seat, it imagines two, the guilty one and the punisher. And in that imagination, the soul withers. Healing is impossible where oneness is denied. Presence, not accusation, is the healing element. Do you feel the rightness of that? God is. This is not a drama. It is a quiet, living fact. Presence is not a storm. It is the stillness that reveals what has always been true beneath the thunder of our self-judgment. When the awareness of God's nearness rises, no speeches, no bargains, something softens, a light comes on within, and we cease defending the mask. Then, and only then, can the next right word, the next right deed appear of itself, without the lash of fear. Prayer is not self-punishment. No. It is not bargaining with God through guilt. It is not the attempt to purchase mercy with tears. Prayer is the inner yielding to what already is, the infinite, invisible, present as your very life. When we stand under that presence, the urge to condemn loses its authority, because judgment after appearances dissolves in the light of what God is. Judge not after appearances, judge righteous judgment. Give up human judgments as to good and evil, by which I do not mean to call evil good, but to refuse the pride that thinks it knows a person by an hour of darkness. Look within and see how condemnation has worked in you. It has narrowed your gaze to the flaw and said, "This is the whole." It has told you that safety lies in striking first at yourself. Has it ever set you free? Has it ever opened your mouth in honest confession without fear, your hands in generous amends without self-loathing? No. It has kept you busy punishing the shadow while your true self stands untouched, waiting. Presence restores contact with what is true. In the awareness that God is, the heart remembers its source. Identity steadies. The compulsions begin to loosen. We will not whitewash a wrong, but we will not poison the well from which correction must be drawn. We begin here. Withdraw the inner verdict long enough to feel the nearness of the Father. Create no case, build no defense. Be still. Let the simple fact, God is, be the atmosphere. In that atmosphere, the soul breathes, the mind clears, and what heals can at last be heard. Let us look at that familiar scene, not as ancient history, but as an interior drama you and I know too well. Early morning, a crowd gathers, the mind gathers, dragging into the center of awareness the one caught, exposed, defenseless. The law is quoted. The precedent is clear. Stones are in the hand, which means arguments are ready, memories are sharpened. The verdict is warming on the tongue. Do you recognize the voices? They are the inner Pharisees who believe that punishment is the way to safety. They are the scribes within who record the fault line by line. And in the middle stands the part of you that has missed the mark and cannot cover itself. This is the hour shame calls a tribunal. Now behold the Master. He does not rise to join the courtroom. He stoops. He writes in the dust. He enters silence. Why? Because condemnation thrives on noise, on the theater of accusation, and truth appears in stillness. God is. The infinite, invisible presence does not argue cases. It dissolves them. Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. He will not take the bait of sides, because the moment you stand on a side, you have admitted separation, and healing cannot come where oneness is denied. He speaks, and not to her first, but to the atmosphere. He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone. This is not a new law. It is the exposure of an old blindness. The accusers, hearing themselves summoned to inward honesty, feel the stones loosen. One by one, from the eldest, those with the longest memory of their own failings, the rocks fall. The verdict is withdrawing. Do you see what happens when human judgment is suspended? You set up a sort of a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes spiritual wisdom, a warmth, a feeling of love. Presence changes the air. Then he turns to her. Woman, not outcast, not label, not case. Woman, where are thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? No man, Lord. Neither do I condemn thee. Go, and sin no more. These are not two disconnected statements. They are one continuous breath of healing. Non-condemnation is not indulgence. It is restoration. In that restored identity, the power to live differently is present. Do you feel the difference between being corrected and being condemned? Under condemnation, the soul collapses. Under correction, grounded in love, the soul stands and walks. Notice, he does not deny the act. He does not call evil good. No. He refuses the atmosphere that makes transformation impossible. He heals not by moral performance, but by identity, by returning her to her name, her origin, her oneness. Your Father and my Father. All that the Father hath is thine. When the self knows its source, behavior finds its order. The Master does not add goodness to her, he uncovers it. He lets the imprisoned splendor see daylight, and then he points its path. Go. Bring this within. When the accusing crowd forms in you, memories, opinions, threats, do not join them. Withdraw the verdict. Be still. Realize God is. As presence is felt, the stones drop. The harsh words you were gathering against yourself, the desperate vows of willpower. In that new atmosphere, correction rises of itself, accountability without self-hatred, repair without despair. The gospel pattern is perpetual. Shame ended first, life renewed next. Non-condemnation opens the door, and in that opening, the soul hears, as if for the first time, a command that is grace and not a lash. Go, and sin no more. Let us look more closely at this. What is condemnation? It is judgment after appearances. It is taking a surface event and fastening it to identity, as if the passing shadow were the person, as if a failure were a name. I am disgusting. I am a failure. Do you notice what has happened there? Not, I did a harmful thing, but, I am harm. That is blindness. That is not insight. Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. What is righteous judgment? Do not imagine it is our personal verdict polished to look holy. No, no. Righteous judgment is spiritual discernment that withholds the human label until the light of presence reveals the truth. It is a seeing from oneness, not from separation. It says, God is. It asks, beneath the appearance, what is the life of God doing here? It discerns the harmful act, yes, but refuses to translate the act into the essence of the person. The Master gives us this pattern again and again. The man born blind. What a perfect instance of our habit of causal condemnation. Who sinned? The disciples ask, eager to fasten a fault. This man or his parents? The Master will have none of it. Neither, he says. Do you feel the correction? He is not denying that blindness is an affliction in our side of things. He is denying the right of the human mind to assign blame as identity. He resets perception so the works of God may be made manifest. Translation: withdraw the verdict so that what God is may appear. And the thief on the cross. Could there be a later hour, a worse appearance? Yet in a breath, paradise. Instant restoration, because in the presence of realized love, the mask falls away, and the true identity is touched. Do you see how quickly grace moves when condemnation is absent? The difference is not the worthiness of the man, it is the atmosphere in which he is seen. Your Father and my Father. One life, recognized, and recognition is redemption. Bring this home to the small hours when you rehearse your fault. You say, I am disgusting. Stop. Listen. Withdraw your opinion. Say instead, I spoke harshly. That was harmful. I see it. You have discerned the act without crucifying the self. Now look again with a single realization. God is. Let that be the atmosphere. As the inner noise quiets, you will feel an opening, a softening. In that openness, wisdom speaks of repair, not despair. Condemnation binds the person to the deed and calls the chain truth. Discernment separates the person from the appearance and calls the truth forth. Condemnation is a closing of the eye. Discernment is the eye washed in presence. Which do you want? Can you feel that only one of these leads to healing? Give up human judgments as to good and evil, by which I do not mean to bless a wrong, but to refuse the blindness that makes the wrong a self. Judge righteous judgment. It is not an argument. It is a pause, a stillness, a contact. Create no case, make no speech. Let the vacuum of withheld opinion form in you, and into that vacuum will rush something you did not manufacture. Light, warmth, a feeling of love. Then you will see what is to be corrected and how. And you will see, too, the one who erred, yourself or another, not as the error, but as the beloved through whom God will yet shine. Now we come to prayer. And here I must be as clear as language allows. Prayer is not going to God to plead a case, not an appeal for leniency, not a performance of sorrow designed to purchase safety. No, no. Prayer is never going to God for something, unless it is to realize God. Do you feel the correction in that? The common model imagines an offended deity holding blessings back until we have suffered enough remorse to unlock the storehouse. But the Father is not a warehouseman tallying your grief. The Father is presence, omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, law, substance, supply, harmony. God is, 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 is. Where then is there a gate to open with tears? Shame would turn prayer into theater. We tremble, we rehearse, we make speeches to the sky. See, I am very sorry. Now will you keep me safe? That is still separation. That is the inner fiction of two. I here, God there. I in rags, God with a ledger. And as long as we pray in that way, we do not touch God. We touch our fear. Do you see what I'm driving at? We are addressing a God of our imagination instead of realizing the infinite, invisible, that is nearer than breath, the very life of our life. In that mode, even our remorse becomes a bargaining chip. And bargaining cannot heal, because it affirms distance. True prayer is different in kind, not in degree. It is a quiet, felt contact, sometimes without a word. An inward assurance that says, not as a sentence, but as a living fact, God is. It is the stillness in which the self drops its case for and against itself, and simply abides in presence. Judge not after appearances, even the appearances of your own emotions. Be still. Withdraw the verdict. Let there be a pause in which you do not ask, do not promise, do not perform. In that pause, the atmosphere changes. A warmth, a gentleness, a certain rightness begins to move within. That is prayer. That is realization. Can you feel that the very moment God is realized, the need to punish yourself dissolves? Why? Because the impulse to punish was born of the fear that you and God were adversaries. In realized oneness, your Father and my Father, punishment yields to correction, and correction arises not as a lash, but as wisdom. You find yourself guided to repair what can be repaired, to speak the needed truth, to make the amends love dictates. Not to earn favor, no, but because in presence your true nature stirs, and right action is its fragrance. Prayer, then, is not a transaction. It is union revealed. It is not asking a far-off power to change conditions. It is consenting to the disclosure of what already is. All that the Father hath is thine. Our vessel is not empty, waiting to be filled by divine mood. Our vessel is full, awaiting our recognition. Sit quietly and sense this. God is, 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 is. Do not force it. Do not dramatize. Simply rest in the fact. When the inner resistance softens and the fear of condemnation ebbs, you will discover that the shame which seemed so necessary to keep you moral was only fog. Presence is the sun. And as the fog lifts, sight returns, and with sight, the simple power to live as one who is not apart. Let us be very plain. I and the Father are one is not a private boast. It is the revelation of the nature of being. If it is true of the Master, it must, in degree, be true of you. You must accept anything that is true of me as being true of you. Your Father and my Father. This relationship is oneness. One. O-N-E, one. Not two beings negotiating across a distance, not a guilty child pleading with a reluctant parent, but one life, one substance, one law appearing as you. Do you feel how this removes the very right to despair? Despair presumes separation as final truth. Oneness denies that premise at the root. Shame is a kind of theological amnesia. It forgets oneness, imagines two, and then attempts to atone for that fictitious distance by suffering. We beat the breast to purchase proximity, as if God could be bought with our sorrow. No. No. God is. The Father is not made nearer by our groans, nor is he held off by our failures. Omnipresence is not a mood, it is reality. To remember this is repentance, not groveling, but returning. Not staging an emotion to impress deity, but coming back to what has always been true of your being. I and the Father are one. Repentance, then, is a homecoming. I will arise and go to my Father is not a geography. It is an inner turn, a yielding to realized presence. In that turn, we discover there is no probationary period in God. All that the Father hath is mine, says the Son. And in prayer we hear also, and all that I have is thine. Not tomorrow, not after you have proved yourself sufficiently miserable, but as the nature of oneness now. Can you sense the dignity and rest in this? The prodigal invents speeches, the Father runs, embraces, restores. Presence does not delay itself. And with this realization, another shift occurs. From self-disgust to quiet humility. Humility is not hatred of self. No, no. Hatred of self is still the old pride clinging to a false identity and punishing it. True humility is the surrender of the false identity, the separated I that imagines it must earn what already is. In humility, the mask drops. We stand as we are, transparent, and the imprisoned splendor begins to shine. There is a softness here, a warmth, a gentle strength that says without argument, God is. I live, move, and have my being in God. Do you see how this ends the soil in which condemnation grows? When oneness is realized, you can name a deed as wrong without translating it into your essence. You can make amends without bowing to despair. For you are not repairing to get back to God. You are repairing because you are with God. Your Father and my Father. One life. In that light, accountability is love in action, and change is the natural outflow of identity, not the frantic labor of a beggar. Remain a moment, quietly. God is. Let that be your name, your breath, your atmosphere. In it, shame finds no root, and the soul walks free. Now we come to the how of it, the inner method by which we make room for what heals. You have heard me say it. When you withhold human judgment, you set up a sort of a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes spiritual wisdom, a warmth, a feeling of love. Do you see the simplicity? The mind that was busy fastening labels and pronouncing verdicts becomes still for a breath, and in that stillness, presence becomes audible. God is. New air, new light, a new atmosphere in which healing is the natural thing. Practice this first movement. Withdraw your opinion. Not deny a fact, not excuse a wrong, but release the verdict you were about to stamp upon yourself, upon the other, upon the past. Create no case, make no speech. When the memory rises, when the face appears, when the name stings, stop. Step back within and say, I will not judge after appearance. Let the label fall. give up human judgments as to good and evil, not to call evil good, but to refuse the blindness that makes the appearance the identity. Can you feel that? The clenched will loosens. The courtroom empties. Silence enters. Now the second movement. Hold that person, yourself if need be, inside a single, unwavering realization. God is. Not as a chant to coerce a mood, but as the quiet statement of reality. God is the life here. God is the ground here. God is the substance, the law, the wisdom, the love here. Rest the image of that one in this atmosphere. Your Father and my Father. One life. Do not try to manufacture tenderness. Do not reach for results. Simply let the truth have the room you have made for it by withdrawing your verdict. Watch the experiential signs. There is often first a softening, like ice beginning to yield. Then a warmth, slight but unmistakable, not produced by thought. Occasionally, there is a feeling of love, not sentimental, not selective, but impersonal, quiet, sure. This is the evidence of presence. You did not make it, you made room. The vacuum is being filled. In that filling, notice how the fear that drove your condemnation ebbs. Notice how the compulsion to punish gives way to the desire to understand, to make right, to bless. Do not mistake this for passivity. No. It is the most radical form of action, because it refuses to cooperate with the false identity. It breaks the alliance with the accusatory mind and returns authority to the spirit. And then, without strain, guidance comes. A word to speak, an apology to offer, a restitution to make, a boundary to set. Not from panic, not from self-loathing, but from a wisdom that now has air to breathe. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. The deed that follows from presence has another fragrance entirely. So let this be your inner practice. At every juncture where shame would seize the reins, withdraw the verdict. Realize God is. Wait for the warmth. Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. When the verdict is withdrawn, a new atmosphere appears. And in that atmosphere, healing becomes natural. Stones drop. Masks fall. The imprisoned splendor finds a way out, and you discover that non-condemnation is not the end of accountability, but the beginning of it. Because in the climate of love, the true self is free to act as it is. Now we must be very clear, or we will miss the heart of this way. Ending shame is not excusing harm. No. It is removing the inner engine that keeps harm running. Fear, separation, the verdict that glues the self to the deed. Condemnation imagines that severity produces holiness. But watch its fruit. Hiding, numbing, defiance. The lash does not break the chain. It tightens it. Under condemnation, the will clenches and says, I must not. And the compulsion answers, I must. But when the verdict is withdrawn and presence is realized, a new faculty appears. Choice, simple and clean. God is. In that atmosphere, you are no longer negotiating with a false identity. You are seeing from oneness, and what is not of your nature loses its claim. Hear again the Master's word. Go and sin no more. Not a threat to terrify a criminal into good behavior, but a revelation spoken to true identity. It says, You are not this. Therefore, you need not live this. Do you feel the difference? A sentence of doom turns the soul inward to self-protection. A word of identity calls the soul outward to walk as what it is. Your Father and my Father. All that the Father hath is thine. When that is recognized, the old pattern has nothing to feed upon. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Let us give ourselves a language that makes change possible. I did wrong is honesty. I am wrong is bondage. I did wrong opens a door to amends. I am wrong cements the mask to the face. Do you see how you can confess the act without accepting the identity? Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. Name the deed. Do not wear it as your name. In that righteous judgment, accountability becomes workable because love, wisdom, law, substance is free to govern the process. What does this look like in practice? You feel the sting of a word you spoke, the harm done. Under shame, the mind rushes to excuses or to self-hatred, two sides of the same separation. Withdraw the verdict. Be still. Realize God is. As the warmth comes, slight but real, you will find the willingness to face the person, to say, I did this. It was harmful. Notice, no performance of misery, no evasion. Then comes guidance, a restitution to make, a boundary to honor, a habit to lay down. Not by gritting the teeth, but by the quiet insistence of truth within. The imprisoned splendor, feeling air and light, no longer consents to live cramped. It does not argue with darkness. It steps into day. This is why non-condemnation does not produce softness in morals. It produces strength. The soul, no longer wasting energy defending a false identity, turns wholly to the deed, to repair it, to replace it, to refuse its repetition. And when lapses do occur, as they may while we are learning to see, we return again to presence without drama. We do not excuse, we do not repeat. We confess, we amend, we walk on. Each return deepens realization, and with deeper realization, the pattern changes of itself, because consciousness sets the form. God is, 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 is. In that fact, you are free to act truly, not to earn love, but because love is your life. Non-condemnation separates the person from the appearance. In that separation, responsibility has room to breathe, and change, actual, steady, moral change, becomes the natural motion of a self restored to its source. Let us go further now and touch the root of our efforting. Shame always moves in the direction of getting. It says, if I punish myself enough, if I perform enough, I will get back my worth. I will get God's favor. I will get permission to breathe. Do you hear the bargaining? That is still separation, still two. The Master's word dissolves the premise. All that the Father hath is thine. Not will be yours after a season of suffering, but is. God is. 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 Our work is not to get, but to let. Not to acquire, but to allow the truth to appear. This is Browning's line brought into prayer. Open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. Consider how shame locks the vessel. The heart contracts. The breath grows shallow. Life becomes a fortress of self-protection. In that contraction, love cannot pour out. And because it cannot pour out, we conclude we do not have it. The well is full and the lid is tight. Then we call the silence emptiness. No, no. The emptiness is not in God. It is in our withholding. Your Father and my Father, one life, has not ceased to be the law, substance, and warmth of your being. But shame, nursing its verdict, clamps the lid and then begs the heavens to fill what it refuses to release. How then do we let? Not by straining, not by rehearsing better speeches to impress deity, but by simple realization. Withdraw your verdict. Be still. Sense, however faintly at first, that God is the fullness within you now. Say it gently, not as magic but as fact. God is. Is. Sit in that atmosphere until a softness comes, that slight inward yielding where the grip loosens. Do not reach for a sensation. Allow the sense of lack to dissolve in the awareness of presence. You are not adding love to yourself. You are ceasing to block its flow. They must let pour out from them, not try to add more to them. Our vessel is already full. Watch the fruits that appear when the lid is off. First, gentleness toward yourself and others. Not indifference to wrong, but the end of the inner lash. Then, honesty without collapse. You can say, I did this, without falling into, I am this. From there springs a natural impulse to repair, not driven by self-hatred, but drawn by love's wisdom. A word to speak, a restitution to make, a habit to set aside. The imprisoned splendor, feeling air and light, seeks expression. It does not have to be coerced into goodness. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Do you feel the simplicity? Healing is not the building of a new self out of guilt. It is the release of the true self already present. I and the Father are one. One. O-N-E, one. In that oneness, worth is not earned, it is recognized. And recognized worth becomes a river. Let it flow. Let. And as it flows, shame has nothing to feed upon, and life, quiet, steady, free, takes its rightful shape. We must now be honest about the law that governs all the fruits we have been naming. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Not favoritism, not special access, not that God grants to one and withholds from another. No, no. All that the Father hath is thine. The variation is not in the giver. It is in the degree to which the life within us consents to know itself as one. Belief says it as a sentence. Realization feels it as breath. I and the Father are one. One. O-N-E, one. When that is more than a phrase, when it settles from the mind into the marrow, life takes a different shape because consciousness sets the pattern. Consider how willpower works. It stands at the edge of appearance and wrestles with it. It threatens the symptom. It bargains with the appetite. It tightens the jaw and writes laws upon the surface while the heart still fears. Willpower may restrain for a moment, but it does not heal because it does not change the level of seeing. Presence does. Realization does. When you abide, even briefly, in the fact, God is, the light shifts. The compulsion has nothing to argue with because you are not standing as the condemned. You are standing as the beloved in whom the Father's life is the only life. Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. In that righteous judgment, the very root of the pattern loosens without a fight. Let me give you a gentle diagnostic. When you relapse into shame, when the old voice returns with its verdict, this is not proof of failure. It is a signal that your realized identity has dimmed. That is all. The lamp did not go out. A hand passed before it. Do you see what I'm driving at? Condemnation would take even this lapse and turn it into a name. No, no. We meet it as a call to return. Withdraw your opinion. Be still. Realize God is. Wait for the warmth, however slight. Can you feel the difference between trying to stop sin and realizing the presence in which sin is not identity? One exhausts, the other releases. One is a duel with shadows, the other is sunrise. How then do we deepen? By returning until God is not a sentence we say to the air, but an inner assurance felt without strain. We do not force results, we build atmosphere. Withholding judgment creates the vacuum. Into that vacuum rushes the spiritual wisdom, the quiet love that governs conduct from within. The Master moved as he did not because his Father was more than your Father, but because his realization was without seam. The disciples faltered not for lack of relationship, but for lack of depth in realization. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Take this to your day. Do not make a project out of punishing yourself into virtue. Punishment organizes fear. It cannot organize life. Let presence organize you. Return often, briefly, sincerely. God is. Your Father and my Father. In that light, habits starve for want of a false self to feed upon. Accountability becomes natural. Repair becomes intelligent. And freedom becomes steady. Not because the will has won a battle, but because oneness has revealed there never was an enemy. Consciousness, not punishment, determines the pattern of life. Therefore, deepen the realization and watch the pattern change. Let us make this very plain and very simple, because it must be lived, not admired. Practice is not self-improvement. It is returning, again and again, to the atmosphere where shame cannot survive. We are not building a stairway to God. No, no. We are consenting to realize God. Therefore, the daily discipline is 3 movements. Stop, soften, see. And it can be done in a breath, in a doorway, in the middle of a sentence, anywhere the old voice rises. First, stop. The instant shame arises, when the mind begins to draft its indictment, when the body tightens to receive the blow. Stop. Refuse the inner courtroom. Say quietly, as an act of authority within your own being, no. No. I will not judge after appearances. Withdraw your opinion. Create no case. Make no speech. Let the verdict drop before it forms. This is not denial of the deed. It is denial of the lie that the deed is your identity. In that stopping, a vacuum appears. Small at first, like the hush after a bell. And into that vacuum, spiritual wisdom is invited. Second, soften. Breathe. Once, twice, slowly. Let the jaw unclench, the shoulders fall, the belly loosen. Shame lives in contraction. Presence is spacious. Allow the body to witness to truth. You are not on trial before a distant deity. You abide in God. Your Father and my Father, one life. As the breath settles, quietly release any effort to defend or to accuse. Let the grip you had on yourself open a little. Can you feel even a slight melting? That softening is the door, not to sentiment, but to reality. God is. Third, see. Hold one gentle realization, not as magic, not as mantra to coerce a mood, but as the simple fact. God is. God is the life here, the law here, the substance and wisdom here. Wait, not long, only until a quiet warmth, a neutrality, or a light tenderness appears. Do not measure it. Do not grade it. Any degree is enough, because it is not your manufacture. It is the sign that the vacuum is filling. Judge not after appearances. Judge righteous judgment. From this seeing, you will discover that what is to be said or done is given you, and it will not be born of fear. Extend this same practice to the face you resent. Stop. No. No. I will not judge after appearances. Soften. Breathe until the image of that one rests in a wider room than your pain. See. Hold them in the same quiet realization. God is. Your Father and my Father. Watch how the heat cools without excusing harm. Often there will come a small warmth, then an understanding that does not erase accountability, but makes it intelligent. Perhaps a word to speak, perhaps silence, perhaps a boundary. Stones will drop of themselves when presence is realized. Let this be the rhythm of your day. Upon waking, touch the sequence. Stop, soften, see. Before a call, in a traffic light, after a misstep. Stop, soften, see. At night, lay the day down in the same atmosphere. 10 seconds done truly is better than 10 minutes of bargaining with a God who needs nothing. And if you stumble and the voice returns with its verdict, do not turn it into a name. No. Let the stumble be a bell calling you back. Withdraw your opinion. Be still. Realize God is. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Therefore, return, not to perform, but to live again in the climate where shame cannot root. God is. Your Father and my Father. In that presence, you will find that change keeps happening, love keeps governing, and you keep walking free. Let us bring the realization into the street, into the phone call, into the doorway where a face waits. Repair, confession, amends. These are not payments to purchase absolution. No. We are not buying our way out of shame. True repair happens when shame is gone, because then love, not self-hatred, is doing the work. What then are confession and amends? They are fruits of restored integrity, the natural outflow when the inner verdict is withdrawn. A vacuum appears, and into that vacuum rushes spiritual wisdom. God is. Presence reveals identity, and identity moves as truth. Approach it this way. First, return to the atmosphere. Stop, soften, see. Judge not after appearances, even the appearance of the other's disappointment or your tremor. Withdraw the verdict about yourself and about them. Realize gently, God is, here, in this very conversation, law, substance, wisdom, love. Your Father and my Father. Wait for the slight warmth, the simple rightness. From that quiet humility, speak truthfully. Say, I was wrong. Name the deed without embroidery, without explanation to protect an image. Take responsibility, not the universe's sorrow, not tomorrow's weather, this deed, this impact. Offer restitution where possible and fitting. Replace what was taken, repair what was broken. Make the call, return the funds, change the practice. Then accept outcomes without collapse. If trust must be rebuilt, if consequences must be carried, you can carry them, because your being is not on trial. Identity is anchored in God. Do you feel how different it is to say, I was wrong, when you are not trying to prove you are worthless? One comes from fear, hungry for punishment. The other comes from presence, desiring truth. In the first, you plead for annihilation to demonstrate sincerity. In the second, you stand in oneness and let love do its clean work. God is. That inner assurance makes humility possible, because nothing essential is at risk. You are not paying for your place in the Father's house. You are walking as a son, a daughter, repairing because love is your nature. Beware of shame-driven amends, over-confessing details to dramatize pain, theatrical self-accusations meant to coerce forgiveness, vows shouted to drown fear, gifts offered to buy silence, apologies that center your agony rather than the harm. No. All of that is still self turned upon self, still fear, still separation. Judge righteous judgment. Let your words be few and true. Offer restitution without demanding a timetable of reconciliation. Do not force forgiveness. Do not script the other's healing. Love does not invade. It serves. There will be times the door does not open. The call is not returned. The past cannot be rewound. In presence, you can face that without collapse. You take the next right step. You keep faith with the repair that is possible, and you consent to be changed. Let consequences be teachers, not executioners. Let boundaries be honored without resentment. This is not weakness. It is strength resting in oneness. I and the Father are one. One. O-N-E, one. All that the Father hath is yours. Dignity, patience, courage. All that you have is offered to the moment. Truth, restitution, steadiness. Make this your way. Begin in God. Move in honesty, complete in peace. If emotion surges, stop and return. If pride flares, soften. If confusion clouds, see. God is. In this atmosphere, amends are intelligent and effective. They neither excuse nor destroy. They mend the fabric because they come from the fabric. Presence realized. Identity remembered. Your Father and my Father. Here, shame has no employment, and love, quietly insistent, does the work. Now let the word of benediction fall gently, not as sentiment, not as indulgence, but as living law revealed in the presence. neither do I condemn thee. Do you feel the weight of that as truth and not merely comfort? It is not a permission slip to remain as we were. No, no. It is the announcement of what is true when God is realized at the center. In the atmosphere of oneness, condemnation has no breath. And when condemnation has no breath, shame loses its power to govern. Fear loses its right to drive. The soul remembers its name. See the way the Spirit has led us, from appearances, where the mind rushes to label and to sentence, to the withdrawing of judgment. In that withholding, a vacuum opens, and into that vacuum, a warmth arrives, a quiet love not manufactured by thought. In that warmth, identity becomes clear. Your Father and my Father, one life. From that identity, new conduct comes of itself, not as a bargain with deity, but as the natural movement of truth. Do you see the order? Appearance, withdrawal, vacuum, warmth, identity, conduct. This is not technique. It is the rhythm of spiritual law enacted in your experience. Be still now, and let this be more than words. Allow yourself, just for a breath, to be seen without verdict. Lay the case down, your case against yourself, your case against your brother, your case against yesterday. Let the stones drop. Rest in the felt rightness that you are held in a presence that condemns not because it is blind, but because it knows your being. I and the Father are one. One. O-N-E, one. All that the Father hath is thine. Can you feel the softening, even slight? That is the benediction beginning to work. God is. God is. 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 And where God is, condemnation is not. Where condemnation is not, sin loses its attraction. Where sin loses its attraction, the will is freed from its duel with shadows, and the heart inclines to what is true without strain. This is the gospel order. This is why the Master could speak without threat, "Go and sin no more." He was not arming the ego with fear. He was unveiling the self that no longer desires the old pattern because it sees from oneness. Carry this with you now as the twofold movement of a life made whole. First, abide in the atmosphere of non-condemnation, toward yourself, toward the next face you meet, so that the vacuum remains open and the warmth ever returns. Second, let your steps answer with the natural outcome. Go and sin no more. Not by grit, but by grace. Not by dread, but by realized identity. Judge not after appearances, judge righteous judgment. And when the old voice rises with its verdict, return. The difference in demonstration is the difference in realization. Therefore, deepen the realization, and the demonstration will follow. So we close as we began, in the simple fact that organizes life. God is. God is. 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 And where God is, condemnation is not. Your Father and my Father. Walk in that benediction, and you will find that shame has ended, fear has lost its throne, and love, quiet, steady, governs your way. Go in this peace, and the life of God will be your conduct.